So conjugate zeros or conjugate pairs are actually something really cool when you're finding zeros and really helpful. Now, if you look at this polynomial, notice I have a 60 for a constant, which means I have a whole lot of numbers to look at for my zeros. This is where a graphing calculator comes in real nice, so that you can kind of zero in on your possibilities. I'm going to go ahead and cheat and know what I have. So I have -2, and I'll put down my coefficients. Okay, go through the process. 1, -2 times 1 is -2, -5, 10, 16, -32. That gives me -30, +60. Woohoo, that one worked. Okay. Then I am going to try 3, again, because I'm cheating. Notice I didn't write that note 0. It helps me just whittle it down. So I get 1. 3 times 1 is 3. Gives me -2, -6, 10, 30, and that one works. So now I'm down to my quadratic. And so I write down my quadratic here from my coefficients. And notice I had no remainders, so I start with my constant as being the 10 and work my way up to x squared. And so here now I can go into using the quadratic formula, because if I try to double bubble, it's not going to work. But sometimes it'll work. I'm not saying it doesn't always work, but in this one I know it won't work. So I go with my quadratic formula and I get x equals -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. So I get 2 plus or minus the square root of -36 over 2. I get 2 plus or minus 6i over 2, and then everything can be divisible by 2. And you'll see I get 1 plus or minus 3i. Now, the whole reason I went through this is I want us to see this. I get 1 plus 3i and I get 1 minus 3i. Those are called conjugates. Conjugates are when in front of the I you have different signs, but otherwise everything else is the same. It's 1 plus 3i and it's 1 minus 3i. Otherwise everything else is the same. And I can tell you that if you ever have this one, you're automatically going to have this one. It's a must. So if I were to tell you that 5i is a 0, then I automatically know -5i is a 0. It's an automatic. So that's really nice, actually, because if you know one, then you know them all. And so if you find a 2i, then you know you can write down a -2i, things like that. Also, the thing about complex is when you graph them on the graphing calculator, you're not going to see them on there, because remember, complex numbers can't be graphed on a real axis, which is what the x and y axes are. So if you graph something that's supposed to have 5 zeros, but it only crosses 3 times, then you know the last two are going to be complex, meaning they have I, and you also know that they're going to be conjugates. So you know if you find one, then you could automatically plug in the other one.